Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise. It is this Monday morning. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
It's a Monday morning. It's not a holiday. It's rainy and very cool right here in the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome. I'm Maupe Oguyusuf.
To Monday, June 24. Well, started some hours ago, but hey, good morning and welcome.
Well, it's 28 degrees centigrade in Katsina State, and that is where some activity will be going on much later today, which we will not intend to. And actually, today there's going to be this Regional Corporation for Security of Lives and Livelihood that the president is expected to be there later today. That's what you get to. It's just giving you how the environment does look. Is bright and early, unlike here in the capital city where the heavens are already open and rain's coming down, but beautiful morning in Katsina State this Monday morning.
Indeed, I mean, the visual there is certainly very pleasing to the eye. And you know, one of the things you begin to notice these days is the fact that almost every state is beginning to do something that is memorable, something that you look forward to seeing. For instance, this underpass, which you're seeing right there on IBB Way in Katsina State, quite remarkable, very similar to that you'll see in Maryland of Lagos State. So it's a good thing to see. And I think Adamawa too also has something like this. Yeah. Oh, they have something quite unique, an underpass and an overpass at the same area. So, well, quite remarkable, you'll say. And I think that is beginning to bring a modern feel to some of the states which, you know, have been in existence since we can remember. I mean, Katsina has very strong historical roots, and certainly a state to visit if you want to, you know, feel that northern culture. You want to know what the North is really about. Katsina will certainly be a place to visit. But all of this new infrastructure, giving it a modern look and feel, is certainly something worth exploring as well. Ayo.
I could ask, actually, well, first to say that I agree with you, Malfoy. I mean, I wish we could just have, I mean, just imagine you wake up in the morning and this is all you see, just skylines of different parts of Nigeria, bringing you one inspiration or the other. Suddenly you yourself will be flying. But I mean, Katsina, this is a very, very beautiful site, no doubt about that. And by the way, for those who don't know, Katsina State was created in 1987 from the Kaduna State of that time. And it's, of course, a good number of us know where that state is as at this moment that we are speaking. And every state in Nigeria, as we all know, have their amazing qualities, and Katsina State no less such. So, again, a beautiful site. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful site.
Yes, indeed. So much later, we'll be bringing you that security summit and peace, security in lives and livelihood. But then, speaking about security, today in the FCT, the Commissioner of Police will be speaking up about some concerns that several people have raised about not exactly sure what's going on in the capital city, what's with all these attacks here and there. So they expect him to speak up on those matters and more. Remember, all the border states in the FCT, he says they've been having some operations, and some persons, you'll get to hear a kind of breakthrough or what it is that they are working on. And one of the very, well, I'm not to alarm anyone in terms of some of the things they have caught, but did you know that some of those bandits actually have jammers? Yeah. They do have jammers. So that speaks volumes. So they've been doing the job, and so it turns out that there's more that they actually do have. How they escape some of those arrests, there's a lot of backstory on those ones, guys. And so it's shocking to a lot of people what the authorities say they keep finding from some of these things. And at some point, there was some capability of how they could breach the communication network. They also have tabs on all of those ones. So not to alarm anyone, but
those are very sophisticated bandits.
Yeah,
very sophisticated people
who are working with
certain
people.
Yes, aiming to bring down the state. I mean, if you have those kind of equipment, you're not just doing it for economic reasons. It would seem that there is also some political undertone to it.
I know it's a democracy, but they said that when they were arrested, 2 senior advocates came up to defend some of those bandits.
Wow. Wow. 2 senior advocates. So, wow. Well, quite a lot to be explored right here in the Federal Capital Territory. I guess we'll be seeing a lot more in the papers. Ayo certainly will bringing us up to speed with what is coming up on business shortly. Ayo, what do you have for us?
Oh, certainly. Well, one of the things that excites me about, Business Morning on Sunrise Daily is the kind of information that comes, and not just to the macroeconomic world, but even to the micro as well. Strategies to unlock economic opportunities in Nigeria is what business will be focusing on, and I'm hoping that micro, small and medium enterprises will be able to maximize the content that the Business Morning on Sunrise Daily crew will be giving us this morning, just so that we can scale up our productivity individually and for the benefit of the nation. So let's go take a look at some of the papers now.
Let's start the papers this morning with some good news, shall we? Front page of this Nigerian newspaper has this one. Nigeria's foreign reserve assets receives $5 million boost from gold bars transaction. It's in quotes, and the details you'll find on page 2 of this Nigerian newspaper today. Blueprint newspaper has the same story. Commercial gold boosts Nigeria's foreign reserves by $5 million US, injects 6 billion naira into economy. That story is right there on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. The details of it continues on the inside pages of the paper. But a number of other papers are raising issues of concern. The Nigerian News Direct, for instance, leads with this: war against cholera, vaccine shortages, poor hygiene, worsen epidemic in Nigeria. Experts warn of looming public health emergency, call for improved hygiene practices as street vendors put customers at risk. Lassa fever, diagnosis and prompt treatment essential. That's according to the WHO. Find the details of that story on page 4 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. The Abuja Inquirer has Abuja murders leave residents in panic. Army General, journalist, DJ, others victims. Police assure of all-round security. Find details of that story on the inside pages of the Abuja Inquirer today. New Telegraph has this one: COT, bank customers lament frivolous deductions, sharp practices. The story has its details on page 2, as experts say Nigeria's financial system worrisome. It's not done in saner climes, says ex-CBN manager. Find details on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Daily Independent has this one: CBN year-end 21.4% inflation mark unrealistic, may hit 40%. That's according to experts, say skyrocketing food inflation may crash economy soon. Ask fiscal authority to be proactive over high food prices. Get the details of that story on the inside pages. That picture, of course, is of the president holding a gold bar, flanked by Dele Alake, Minister of Solid Minerals, and the Executive Secretary, Solid Minerals Development Fund, during the minister's presentation of a gold bar to the president. Now, right under that story is Zamfara moves to swell number of non-viable airports in Nigeria. State governments building beyond their capacity, according to analysts. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the paper today. The Guardian newspaper: CBN stress tests FX market reform, stops BDC funding. Stories on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper today. Vanguard has this one: textile industry faces total collapse as revival efforts fail. The writers are right there on the front page for you, including FG unveils $3.5 billion revamp plan to create 20,000 jobs. The story on the inside pages. Daily Trust: herders reject Senate's bill on ranching. It's ill-conceived, according to Macban. Livestock Ministry, best solution. Details on the inside pages. The Nigerian Observer has this one on its front page. Saudi's multi-currency trade gives Nigeria options to stabilize Naira, as US dollars share in global reserves stands at 54% in Q4 23. Leadership newspaper has this very concerning story. Cost of living. CSOs, experts demand pay rise for soldiers. The story is on page 8. NAS may intervene, according to Senate spokesperson. FG already working on it, as from the Defense Headquarters. Those are some of the papers we have for you today.
Well, the one that catches my attention straight off is what we have on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, guys. It's the one that talks about herders rejecting the Senate's bill on ranching. I think one of the understanding that again, one of those things we always talk about is the need for communication. I'm certain that there are some members of the National Assembly, some senators, some House of Reps members who are, in one form of cattle ranching. Well, they own, cattle as well. If that be the case, and this bill is going to be, is being proposed by the National Assembly, the Senate in particular, I expect that there ought to have been some measure of communication, so the people who are on the fields, who are the ones that move around with their cattle, can also have their inputs, because it's their market, it's their space, it's their field. Now, this is not to say it's justified or not justified, but in the place of leadership, communication remains the most important element in the communication process. Without communicating, in the leadership process, without communicating, whoever it is that is leading is just taking a stroll. There will be no following. And that is perhaps what we are seeing here. So on the one hand is the members of MACBAN. On the other hand, there are several people who are not members of MACBAN, but they are also, the owners of this cattle that we have, that's being an issue over the years. So exactly what is it that they are proposing? What is it that they are opposing? I'm expecting that in the coming days, there will be some kind of communication between the government and between the National Assembly and all of these practitioners, because it is not to take for granted that they will always, protest or anything. As far as they are concerned, they say it's ill-conceived, but then exactly what is ill-conceived is an issue that I think needs significant attention, particularly members of the National Assembly who themselves have stake in that industry. Don't forget that from the previous government, we understand that the livestock value chain in Nigeria is something in the region of, was something in the region of 30 trillion naira. That is as at maybe 4 or 5 years ago. That is then. What's the value now? How do we scale it up? How do we maximize it? Those are the issues that need to be considered, and I hope are being considered in this bill that the Senate is proposing, which already is getting the reaction of the practitioners. That's my take this morning from one of the papers, guys. Malcolm.
Well, quite a lot to mull over, Ayo. I can tell you that same paper stood out for us here. We already had it on standby. But, it tells you the importance of the story which you're highlighting. This is a story which we have been told, affects security a great deal. So we cannot emphasize it enough. But let me take a look at Vanguard newspapers. Look at the front page. In recent times, I was beginning to give myself a pat on the back that when it comes to, being very intentional about, as much as possible, let us buy what is made in our country. Yes, things are difficult for a number of businesses. Things are difficult, not just for a number, for a lot of businesses. But you still have very brave people who are, doing business in this economy. And I think that we need to be very intentional about our purchases, from the food we consume to the fabric we wear to the bags we choose to carry, where you can help it, the glasses you choose to wear, everything that you possibly can do, to support the Nigerian economy. Because when you buy these things, it means that a business continues to be in business. So if you look at the front page of Vanguard newspapers this morning, you see this: textile industry faces total collapse as revival efforts fail. Chimling, I was just going to crack a joke about how one time I was telling someone, you know, my dress is made in Nigeria. Oh, my dress is... And the person said, the fabric with which you've made that dress, is it made in Nigeria? And then, you know, it got me thinking about how, you know, how much more we really need to do to get our textile industry back on track. If we know that one of the essentials of a human being, I mean, we've been told clothing is one of them, food is one of them, and housing. Those are the three main things we need to survive on a daily basis. And our country cannot produce fabric that Nigerians will use, will wear. We should be concerned. We should be very worried about it. So this story on the front page of the Vanguard newspapers is something that should, you know, give the people in the economy, people who are worrying about the economy on a daily basis, a lot of concern. And when I mean people who can do something about it. Government officials, they should be concerned about what exactly is happening in the textile industry, and even more so in the states where this textile you know, factories were situated. Because if these factories are able to come back, you know, and get to work, do you know what impact that would have? What will it take for some of our textile industries to come back? Well, I think just in case they want, you know, some pointers, the front page of the Vanguard this morning will certainly give them that.
Well, we're keeping tabs on the oil sector this as well, not just today. Dangote Refinery spoke to some journalists the other day, how he raised the alarm. They said that the IOCs appear to be deliberately frustrating operations of their facility, and so we'll wait and see what happens, even though the president had given that directive that, look, they have to make sure that they supply crude. He said that was why they were actually going out to the country, to the States, to go get crude.
To import?
Yeah.
I mean, it's right there, everywhere. Dangote accuses IOCs of plotting failure of its refinery.
That's huge. We want to see how the sector will respond to it. The IOC is more powerful than government and than these agencies here. I guess we'll wait and see. And the minister himself, Minister of Petroleum Resources, Senator Lokobiri, who was here the other day, he's not gotten back to us as of yet on some of those matters. He said he was going to get back to us. All those areas that were blocked, and then some of this investigation. So we're waiting on him still. But there's a lot of questions about security. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. So stay on with us.
The future belongs to the dreamers, to the doers, to those who are not afraid of the side hustle. It's for those who are ready to turn their passion into something big. And to help keep you revitalized and inspired, Top T is with you every step of the way. You are made for more. Find your inspiration. Top T, big round bags of flavor.
The journey to success is not always smooth. There are rough patches on the path to accomplishment. The struggle continues until solution appears that launches you to the world of your dreams, protecting, securing, and ensuring that you reach your goals. At International Energy Insurance, we know that the journey to actualizing your dreams could be tough, but we are always there to support you and help you prepare for the unexpected. International Energy Insurance is a Nuremberger company now positioned to serve you better. International Energy Insurance PLC. Energy to care.
Some say learning is fun, but as a mom, I see how demanding it can be for my child. That's why I ensure he starts every day with a cup of Bonvita. Give your child Bonvita. It contains essential essential vitamins and minerals that support mental and physical vitality. Bonvita. Prepare them to win every day.
The future belongs to the dreamers, to the doers, to those who are not afraid of the side hustle. It's for those who are ready to turn their passion into something big. And to help keep you revitalized and inspired, Top T is with you every step of the way. You are made for more. Find your inspiration. Top T, big round bags of flavor.
Of government is to protect the lives and property of citizens. If government cannot provide security, it has no business being there. But we still have a long way to go. Our big problem in Edo is no longer kidnapping as such. Our big problem in Edo, from the security reports we have, is homicide, killings of people. And these killings is mainly as a result of the activities of cultists and community youths. How can you imagine a young girl just graduated and goes to school to collect her results, and people attack her, rape her, and kill her in Benin? This happened a few days ago. It's only sick minds that will do such things. People are possessed who belong to all sorts of crazy groups calling themselves cults and okayeles. Those are the sort of people, those are the sort of things they do. So the church must join us and help us that we have to wipe out cultism. We don't need such devious and heinous groups anymore for progress. That is the biggest threat we face today in Edo State, cultism. Boys wake up and they just needlessly kill each other in the name of rivalry.
Welcome back. Yes, indeed. Dr. Dan Moore joins us here in the studio. He is an expert in public policy analysis with specialization in defense and national security. He is currently the Executive Chairman, Center for Poverty Eradication, Development and Equal Opportunity here in Abuja. But he has served 3 terms as Special Advisor, National Security Affairs to the National Security Advisor in the presidency under 3 consecutive governments. That's 3 consecutive presidents.
Yes. That's
back to back.
Yes.
They kept on reappointing you.
Correct.
Does it mean you were so good they kept you thrice?
I suppose so. If I was not useful, they won't reappoint me with it.
Okay, so let's talk about security. Let's start off with that. It's raising a lot of concern. I mean, you've seen some of the dailies here.
Yes.
But in terms of where we are at the moment, because the governor there, well, to some, he may come off as though he's helpless.
Yes.
He doesn't seem to be, what's that word we use, on top of the situation, as it were. And then we've seen some of the scenarios in FCT here.
That's right.
And so one wonders, I mean, these are the kind of things that you always monitor, you put your tracks on as national security officers.
Yes.
Does it appear as though the agencies are being overwhelmed by this? Why are they not able to always address this?
You know, the situation got worse under the last government, under Muhammadu Buhari. And since this government came, aside from changing the leadership, they have not really done anything significant that will impact on this. Because, you see, the policies that have been introduced so far are the kinds of policies that have made situations worse in terms of poverty, in terms of unemployment. And so you realize that the number of crime, the number of homicide crime, as he's talking about, or the security situation is getting worse. It is getting worse because we had expected, for instance, when they announced the issue of state police, if the law was quickly passed and we had state police, you will see that the situation would have started to improve. Secondly, you will notice that they have also a long time ago been talking about the issue of preventing open grazing. As long as they continue to move with their cattle up and down and they're fighting with the farmers, destroying their farms and taking over their places, there will be problems. And you see that nothing significant has been done in that area. You will also notice that when you have policies that are creating some hardships, some of the key policies that they have made have tended to create hardship. So the more poverty that is increasing in the society, you should expect the rate of crime to go up. The more actions are not, for instance, there were a lot of people who were participants in the terrorist activities, who were simply groomed or rehabilitated, quote unquote, for 2 weeks and injected into the army. So you realize that those kinds, I had thought that the government would set up a committee to weed out those kinds of people that were put in. That was really illegal. Within the security cycle, many of us feel very bad about it.
So, while you served 3 times under 3 different governments and presidents, if we put if we took the appropriate steps, would we be where we are today?
You realize that security problems come and go. Remember, during our time, there was a Maitaseni uprising that was in Kano, which is the same religious situation, if you want, the old Boko Haram, that was killing people. It took us only 2 months to finish it, and you never heard of it again. So there are certain strategies that you adapt to get these things done. But you see, they also need cooperation from the president, from the chief executive, from the commander-in-chief. If people are arrested and put in jail for committing the same crime, and the same people are taken out and then put into the army, you realize that they become a risk in the army. That is why even doing operations now for the Nigerian army is very difficult, because there are some Boko Haram members that were taken in large quantity, in thousands, and made to be members of the army and given uniform.
The army has refuted that particular claim. They have refuted that particular report, saying that no large number of people, as you have put it, were recruited into the Nigerian army to the best of their knowledge. Where is that coming from?
The issue is that they were put there. For instance, there were many of them that had been under detention and were released. They were rehabilitated for about 2 weeks and put into the army. And by the way, it was not only the army. They were also put into the customs, they were also put into the police, and they were also put into other agencies. These are things that they need to set up a committee to investigate. When there are issues and allegations of this nature, you don't just come and say, as a new chief executive, maybe chief of defense staff or chief of the army, you should set up a committee and investigate. And some of us that think we have some information can then testify.
Sorry, did they go, because the army did say, look, are you talking about after the radicalization program, then they applied and got into the army, or they went straight from prison to the army?
No. The de-eradication program was only 2 weeks. If you are familiar with rehabilitation, you cannot de-eradicate with reduced radicalization, particularly when you have religious fanatics, for just in 2 weeks. Those were the ones that apparently were recruited and put into the army. What I'm saying is that there need to be a committee to investigate these kinds of things, so that you don't have concrete report you can refer to. You understand? So when you don't set up a committee to investigate concrete allegations that some people are aware that they did happen, and you make that statement, it becomes very difficult.
But if we have the offices of the NSA and all those other offices who are supposed to be watching to make sure this kind of things don't happen, as you say they did, were they sitting on their hands?
No. You see, if the directive comes from the commander-in-chief, there is very little you can do about it. I think that some of these directives were from President Buhari himself when he was in power. You understand? So when there is a change of government, what you require the new NSA and the new service chiefs that were appointed to do was to set a committee so that people that have this kind of information can testify.
I'm looking at the review, because the Army was really very concerned about that report. That was something that actually went viral, yes. Saying that the Army had recruited repented Boko Haram members. Yes, indeed, there was a program to rehabilitate, and this is not really the crux of the conversation that we're having this morning, but yes. If there is a way to, to contest some of the things that you have said, then we have to make sure that we're informing members of the public very factually. Right. I'm looking at, this is the report now, that the Army has debunks a viral report that it recruited repented Boko Haram members. Mr. Onyema Nwachukwu, Director of Press, said the Army, beg your pardon, he's a general now, the Army said while it is highly regrettable that a lady was killed, it was some incident that happened. The incident should not be used to propagate the claim that the act was committed by a repentant Boko Haram member recruited into the Nigerian Army. So apparently something had happened and people had blamed a repentant Boko Haram member recruited into the Nigerian Army. He says here, the Nigerian Army has at no point in time, either in the past or present, enlisted repentant Boko Haram members to its strength. However, considerations were given to Civilian Joint Task Force, yes. That's JTF, who in the fight against terrorism and insurgency in the Northeast distinguished themselves morally and patriotically. Such members of the CJTF must have also shown commitment, dedication, and loyalty to the service and nation. So it does appear that what people are referring to, or the people are referring to as repentant Boko Haram members, were actually members of the Civilian Joint Task Force, whom everybody was aware was fighting alongside members of the Nigerian Army in Borno State. Is that something that
it's possible, but remember only recently, former President Obasanjo made the same statement that I'm talking about here. So when you hear statements from people like that, there is some bit of credibility to it. That is why I say...
No, but it's possible that there's a mix-up.
It's possible.
Okay, but let us go on to the issue of, identifying security threats. Because right now, as the governor of Edo State has said, that, it's very important for one to be able to study the threats facing every state at a point in time. He says the threat in Edo, for instance, in his own state, is not the threat of kidnapping as such. I'm using his term now, as such. In other words, it's still there, but it's not the biggest thing. Right now, the biggest thing is homicide, and it's caused by cultism. And then he also cited the situation of the young lady who was raped to death. It's not the first time we're seeing such a situation. I think a few years back, sometime in 2020, we also had another young lady, Vera Owela, who was also raped to death in Edo State as well. These are trends that are really very, very disturbing. So in your own estimation, what would you say has given rise to, cultism in states like that? It's not just Edo State. You also find it a lot around, concentrated around the South states.
Cultism has been on the increase because of this, also from the universities, from the institutions of higher learning. Of recent, beginning from, for instance, when they set up the highway, the traffic controllers on the highway, headed by Wole Soyinka at that time. A lot of people felt that it was a recruitment channel for cultists. And you realize that because you have a lot of problems that people are suffering, there is a tendency, when the economic situation is very bad, when the students are having difficulty in feeding themselves, when they cannot get money to take care of themselves on the campus, these kind of things are bound to come up. The reason is because they have to find where to belong to be able to do some criminal activities even, to be able to make a living. So you see that when the economic situation in the country is very bad, when unemployment is going up, and anxieties, people have graduated for a long time, they cannot get job. There is a feeling that many of them now join the sacred cause. And they believe that in sacred cause, they have some kind of brotherhood network through which they can help them to get appointments and things like that. So again, the bad economic situation will contribute to cultism. Secondly, there is also the social conditions. When you have families under strain, and people are not being socialized properly at family level, and you have these kinds of difficulties, they will also affect the kind of people that are growing up in that environment. And then you also look at the situation of discipline on the campuses. When you realize that there's not much discipline on the campuses, a lot of campuses are reporting cultism and all this. When they graduate, they will also continue in the same vein.
Is that there's nothing we can, excuse me, there's nothing we can do about it?
No, there's a lot that can be done. For instance, when we were in the NSA, what we did was to send undercover agents to go and join some of the cultists on the campuses and to join some of the cultists in the various groups. You know, they were behaving as cultists, but they were reporting to us, to government. So I think they need to do more of that. The reason is that they have to identify their key leaders and the key operators and have agents planted in these cultist organizations.
Were you successful?
We were largely successful.
Out.
No, they were not completely stamped out, but many of them were arrested and many of them ran out of those campuses and things like that. But you have to have something like that. If you don't have cover agents, you know, these are secret societies that don't operate publicly. So for security to be able to handle them, you need undercover agents to join those societies. And I think that's what we need to do more and more of it now, to be able to know the ringleaders that arrest them.
We realized that there was a point in time when cultism was a big problem for the entire country, for especially tertiary institutions in the country. And yes. I recall a time when there was a massive plan to, you know, make sure that cultism was at least openly, it came to an end. So we had students on campuses renouncing cultism. I'm trying to remember now.
No, it was under the
Babangida when I was really young, yes.
No, it was under I was special advisor of National Security Affairs to the NSA at that time.
Yes.
It was during Alhaji Muhammad Gambo. And then later on, during when Alhaji Gambo was the NSA. And it was also during General Aliu Muhammad Gusau. And I was the special advisor. That's why I'm telling you.
Yeah, so but it was really successful then. At least we know that cultism came to an all-time low. The question is, what has given it a resurgence? Why weren't the measures that were put in place at that time to make, you know, people renounce? People who had already taken up this cultism, you know, on the Front Valley, were made to renounce cultism, drop arms, drop all manner of things, and there was a massive campaign across campuses. Why wasn't it, you know, sustained? Why do you think it was difficult for government to and also society to keep it on the down low?
You know, you are confirming exactly what I told you. I was at that time special advisor, National Security Affairs to the NSA, when we did that. And I'm saying that now that it's coming back, they need to do the same things we did. And I'm saying that what we did that time was to have agents planted in the various cultist agencies. And those that were found on the campuses, for you to go back to that campus and continue with your studies, it was a requirement that you must renounce. Do you understand? That is why I'm telling you that during that time, it went down. But they have to do the same thing. I think that is the most effective way.
Are you not in touch with them? Are they not doing it? Did you check with them if they've dropped those measures? And why would they drop them if they
Well, if you see situations go like, you know, once, again, I left the office of the NSA, and, you know, almost, you know, 12, 15 years ago. So it's very difficult to know exactly what is happening. But I'm saying that there are normal strategies that when they are happening like this, the NSA normally gives instructions to the operational security agencies, the SSS and all that to do that. So if cultism is going up, they need to do more of that. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm saying that when we were there, we did it like that and it worked. And they have to do the similar thing. It's the same thing I told you when the Bataseni crisis started during our time. You know, we handled it. But when problems come up, you address them. And I think that one of the easiest ways to address the issue of cultism, because of the secrecy involved, is planting agents of government or security agencies there. When they report on them, those that want to see continue their studies, they will renounce it. And the key leaders will be arrested. Or they will run out of the campuses.
Let me take you up on this issue which you have just raised, which is the issue of the herdsmen and, you know, the herdsmen crisis. We've seen in recent times the National Assembly try to intervene at the highest levels on this matter. And it does appear that there is some resistance, you know, around. Only recently also, we also heard, and this is something that Chief Audu Ogbe has been speaking about a lot, consistently, talking about this ECOWAS protocol that was agreed that enables not just human beings move freely, but also their animals. They can move in with their animals into Nigeria without any problems. Why do you think that Nigeria has found it very difficult to readdress that particular treaty, which seems to be giving it a lot of problems?
Well, let me begin with the Senate. The Senate attempted the bill that was moved to try to set up. You see, the bill that was proposed by Senator Titus Zam is what has caused so much problems, because the bill doesn't quite address the issue of the movements, or prevention of open grazing. The bill was only focusing on husbandry and ranches development, which is basically an agricultural thing. It has nothing to do with the issue. But to talk about the transhumans, the provision of ECOWAS, now you will realize that the transhumans provision also has provisions guiding how it should be executed. You cannot say that because a country allows free movement, then you will move with arms or you will move and cause problems. So the people, when you come in and cause problems, you are supposed to be arrested and you are supposed to be dealt with. And the problems are getting more and more because there seems to be, for instance, when they take over, when they come into Nigeria, usually when foreigners come into another country, they are very careful. And under the transhuman, even under ECOWAS, there are certain regulations. When you come in, they have to be properly documented. And then there are certain areas, you don't move into the rural communities on your own and then kill people and take over their places and habitate those places. And the issue is that because a lot of this is happening, and a lot of people that are being affected are moving into IDP camps or moving into the churches or moving into their relatives' houses. And these people have taken over and are settling there, and our government and our security agencies have not done much to uproot them. Because even the few states that were able to set up prevention of open grazing laws, we are able to execute them. Only the federal government has the might at the moment, and the security might and the police might, to be able to implement that kind of law. You realize states like Benue, for instance, that had that kind of law couldn't implement it, because without state police at the state level, you won't be able to implement it. What is really required of government now? I thought that there will be a situation where a deliberate decision will be taken, that some money will be set aside to resettle these people who are in IDP camps. Some of them have been there 10, 15 years. Which is really not good. If there is a law that is needed now, it's certainly not the kind that the Titus Zam brought. We will need a law on the resettlement of these people that have been displaced and the establishment of their farms.
We had some of the security chiefs at different platforms, and they spoke in terms of what they are actually doing and how they say they're making progress. But yes, in the north-central areas, they need to tighten the news a little bit to ensure that they don't spill into other regions. And then some of the governors also say they are doing something about the IDPs, moving the people back to their homes. But you say they're not doing enough or anything. So which specific areas? There are specific IDP camps that you think nothing is being done?
In Benue, in Nasarawa and in Plateau, where I have because even in my own village, all of them are moved out. Some are in the churches. And it's been like that for
some are moved back to their house.
No, when they are moved back, because the same people that uprooted them, the terrorist Fulani herdsmen that came and uprooted them, when you don't prevent the open grazing, what is happening is that when they move back, they are forced to come back. Some of them are killed again, and they are forced to rush back. And some of them are forced to rush back to the churches. The reason is that you have to have an enforcement.
Recent specific case?
Yes.
So the authorities can focus on that one.
No, in Bokos in Plateau, all those that went back, they were attacked again, and they scattered. And in Logo local government and in Goma local government, the same thing happened. The issue is this: until you have a law that limits their movement, when these people move back to their places, they come back and attack them, and they are forced to run back. That is why I'm saying you will need to have a particular budget for them to reestablish their settlement and establish their farms, and then have to have a law that will prevent at that level. Until the states have police, they cannot do that. So you really need a law now at the National Assembly, act of the National Assembly to be able to do that.
Before we bring in my colleague, since you're in charge of poverty reduction of agency or office, what do you think about this call for minimum wage? Is that going to in any way reduce poverty?
The minimum wage will reduce poverty. But you see, to address minimum wage, there are a lot of things associated to it. Minimum wage has to be tied to productivity. Minimum wage, has to be done in such a way that it will be affordable to implement. At the moment, if for instance, you make the minimum wage they're talking about, 60,000 a month or 65,000 a month, there are a lot of other small-scale employers that may not be able to pay that. So if we legislate, as the President has sent to the National Assembly, it will be a big problem. But what Nigeria needs really is to deregulate the Nigerian workers. You see, when the government forces workers to be employed by one particular employer with one job and one employer, you have problems of minimum wage. If we deregulate the workers in a situation where they can have 2 or 3 jobs, you realize that minimum wage loses meaning. In Nigeria, because of the colonial history, it was very difficult for the British people who were employed in British establishment or the French establishment in Africa to be allowed to have jobs here and there. But we have continued with those laws in the service. Right now, you cannot work here, and in the evening, even when you close, do another job.
You heard about part of the criticism. They think that at the moment, other than farming,
yes,
civil servants are not allowed to do anything
That's what I'm saying, that is bad.
Yeah, but some are saying if the accusations against some civil servants who have been caught, manipulate, stealing funds, if you allow them to do certain other things other than farming, they will now take that money and set up businesses. And so there'll be more corruption. It will even be harder to track. What do you think about that?
No, you see, for instance, people should be paid, minimum wage should be at the level of hours, not at the level of in every country, you talk of minimum wage per hour, so that people can employ people. When you employ, the discourse of minimum wage has an issue. You don't talk of minimum wage at a weekly level or at a monthly level. Minimum wage in all nations are done. If we do like that, even the small-scale employers will be able to. For instance, they will employ some people, they say, I need you for only 5 hours. For instance, why do you want to keep a laborer, a cleaner, that comes to the ministry in the morning, before people come, 6 a.m., and by 10, they have finished their work, and yet you keep them there until closing hours? If you pay them for those hours and release them to go to other jobs, that's what I'm talking about, the regulation. When the government forces employers to have only one job, you have no other alternative to make any extra income. You have to maybe sell your services there to people illegally. But if you allow people, look, you can come and work this number of hours. If not, if you make it 65,000, for instance, and the small-scale employers cannot pay, and they retrench people, you have a greater problem of unemployment in the country. So the discussion of minimum wage should be taken to the level of hours, so that people can say, and then when you come to work, it used to be that you slot in the card, as is done in other nations. Then when you leave, you pull out. Now it is even more advanced. As you enter, you put your own finger, so somebody cannot slot your card for you. And so we need that kind of reforms in the Nigerian civil service to be able to deal with the issue of minimum wage. First, let's consider minimum wage at the level of hourly issue, so that if people are working for you for 5 hours, you pay them for those 5 hours. And then you have to monitor those 5 hours, because they come in and press their hands. So the number of hours they were in the office can easily be dictated. You understand? So, but when it used to be slot, you slot your ID, others can slot for you. But if you have to put your hand and go to the office, when you leave, you put your hand and go out, or you will realize that. So you have to have a system like that. So the debate should not be at the level of minimum wage, at the level of monthly minimum wage. It will be a question of hours. So the number of hours you are putting in should determine what you earn. Then you will realize that it shouldn't be a question of how much to pay. It will be a question of how much. The debate will move away from ability to pay to ability to earn.
Well, Dr. Mo, one of the things that's closely connected to what you just said now about the minimum wage is the issue of employment or unemployment, and its connection to the security matter that we began the conversation with this morning. I'm over the past few years, 2-3 years or thereabout, we've heard former President Obasanjo repeatedly say that, look, if we do not deal with the problem of unemployment, deal with the problem of poverty, and deal with the problems at the lowest levels of government in our country, we may not be able to decisively deal with the problem of insecurity. In fact, himself, along with a number of other people, have gone ahead to say that if we do not address the challenge of not gainfully employing or engaging young people, we are sitting on a time bomb waiting to happen, especially in the area of insecurity. How do you respond to that? Because there are those who would wonder, in order to address the security challenges facing us in the nation, in the different parts of the country, how about addressing the problem of the major issues that are causing them in the first place?
I totally agree that the more unemployment you have, the more security problems will come up. Now, what I'm trying to say is a framework whereby, more people can be employed. Because if we go ahead and legislate that minimum wage should be, say, 60,000, there are a lot of small-scale industries that are and employers that are now cannot afford to pay that. Some are paying 40, some are paying 50. But if we make it a question of an hourly minimum wage, then you realize that it depends on how much you need these people. You pay them based on that. So the wage can be reasonable per hour by the number of hours they work. So that you realize that those that will not be able to pay people 60,000 or 65,000 as minimum wage will be able to pay them based on the need and the work they have for them to do. So that you tie productivity to the salaries you are paying. But you see, if you now do that, you realize that you create openings. People work here and then they move to other jobs. If you have to pay people per hours, you realize that even students can be doing part-time. Like as it is done in other countries, you have maybe you have 5 hours free, and there is a place you can go and work for the 5 hours. They pay you for the hours. You go. So if you do like that, it will free up for people to get more jobs than having a lump sum that you must pay these people at this level and realizing that even state governments are complaining they cannot pay. You understand? So we have to have a system whereby, workers are deregulated to the level whereby if you come and work here and finish your time there, you go to another job. You should be allowed to do that. But if you tie workers' hands and legs to one employer and one job and not allow them to do anything even after their closing hours to earn extra income, then you are strangulating them and increasing poverty. Basically, government now becomes an agent for promoting poverty.
Well, Dr. Mo, that is very well understood, but it's in the area of, first of all, are we even able to identify that these are security triggers in the various states all across the country? Okay, you've talked about a way to address unemployment, literally deregulating it to the lowest levels and all of that. That is understandable. There are those who also wonder whether or not our young people are truly trained to be entrepreneurs. Part of the objectives of the National Youth Service Corps scheme is for the young people themselves to be not just employable, but to be able to develop entrepreneurial mindset so that they're not even looking for jobs. But my question this morning really, Dr. Mo, is whether or not we are preparing our young people, we are decisively dealing with the problem of security, of our security problems from the very roots.
That has to do also with the curriculums in our schools. Now, if a lot of people graduate, they have certificates, but they don't have the necessary skills. I also served as a member of the Presidential Jobs Board, under President Jonathan. And we realized that there are a lot of jobs. You won't believe it, there were people on that committee, people such as, Alhaji Dangote that were on that committee. People such as Adetola were also on that committee with me. And I was able to realize that they have a lot of jobs, but people don't have the skills to do it. So I agree with you that it may be possible that even our universities will need to be part of this discourse, in the sense that they will now have to give people not just the liberal training, but have some training. So when the NYSC started doing the entrepreneurial training, that was, it was supposed to be a corrective measure so that as people come out with certificates and don't have the skills, they can then be trained to do that. But you see, you have to tie these skills to the jobs available, and that will have to depend on the training you are giving them in the various institutions they are attending, whether it's in the polytechnics or in the universities or that. And that has to be, there has to also be a policy in that regard.
Okay, Dr. Mo, just one last one from me. Most of the time when we talk about minimum wage, talk about insecurity and all of these things, most of the time we look at the federal government. But all of these issues happen at the state levels, at the local government levels. Do you think these governments themselves are structured in a way to deal with these problems decisively? Do you think the people occupying these offices have significant enough understanding of what the challenges are to be able to deal with them from that route?
No, you know, if you deregulate salaries and you deregulate workers, it's possible that state governments could be paying differential wages from the federal government. But if you decide on one minimum wage that must be paid across the board, that is why you have a lot of backlog of salaries, you know, at the local government level, at the state government level, you know. Now, the capacity to be able to do that you are asking is that they may not necessarily have that kind of capacity, but they can get consultants that can assist them in putting those things together. Because you cannot deregulate salaries and say they should pay differential salaries and not deregulate the workers, which is the point I'm trying to make. If you deregulate salaries and ask state governments or private sector or corporations to pay whatever they can afford to pay, then you must deregulate the workers to be able to earn the income from wherever they can afford to earn.
So, Doctor, why have you not spoken about deregulating salaries for governors and National Assembly members and State Assembly members? Are they not workers too?
It is the same thing. You see, once you reduce...
How should we proceed with that one?
Is you use hours, the number of sitting hours, and how much you have to pay them by sitting hours. You see, once you reduce the issue to hours, somebody can you employ a person for one month. At the end of the 1 month is the hours they have worked that you will pay them.
So should we start from there then?
You know, we can start even from there. It's better. For instance, how many hours they are sitting, they should be paid sitting allowance. Not box time. That's the point I'm trying to make.
In other words, we shouldn't they shouldn't be working on a full-time basis.
I worked on a memo on this to pass on to the president. You know my pedigree. For instance, when there was issue of corruption so much in Obasanjo's government, I was the one that wrote a private memo to Obasanjo that set up the EFCC. You see, you will notice that under Jonathan, when there was a security crisis in the Niger Delta, I wrote a private memo, to Yaradua, at that time, late President Yaradua, that set up the Ministry for Niger Delta Affairs and the amnesty program. They were my private memo. Under Buhari here, just yesterday's government, I was the one that wrote a memo, 3 memos, gave to Buhari and to Professor Sibanjo, insisting that they should establish the Ministry for Niger Delta, the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs, Poverty Rights. And I've done a similar thing on these issues I'm trying to tell you here, and how Nigerian workers can be deregulated. And I'm hoping to present it to the president. It's very difficult to be able to explain that.
Can you kindly do another memo in terms of how to ensure that the National Assembly governors, let's see how we can pay, maybe not on a full-time basis, so that perhaps it will be a good starting point.
Yes, this memo I'm talking includes all of this. For instance,
oh, pardon me, I didn't mean to start it. I just had but we'll focus on that much later.
But what I'm saying is reduce everybody's work to the number of hours they are putting in. Then you can match productivity with salaries.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dan Mo. Yes. Well, let's go on Business Morning on Sunrise. It comes up now.
Interesting conversation there with Chamberlain and the guest. Trying to get governors to be paid per sitting and hours. I wonder what that would do to our revenue, especially at this time. We're talking of new minimum wage and cutting costs and all of that. That might be an interesting conversation to follow up, but good morning, everyone. Welcome to this side of the program. This is Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm Mini John Mekwa. We do a bit of business here before we head back to continue that part of the conversation. Oil prices is what we're beginning with as usual. It's inched down on Monday on concerns of higher for longer interest rate. This has been the driving factor for oil prices since last week. The resurface and then the lifting of the dollar, of setting support for oil markets geopolitical. Look at the numbers right here. It's red, 0.2 at $85.19 a barrel. That's for Brent. WTI is also red, $80.66 a barrel. And yes, the dollar index is a major driver for the numbers this morning. 6 major currencies is what the dollar was lifted against. It climbed on Friday and was slightly up again even today after Purchasing Managers Index data showed that the United States business activity was at a 26-month high in June. I wonder where the interest rate cuts will be coming. However, both benchmark crude contracts gained about 3% last week on signs of stronger oil products demand in the United States, which is the largest consumer, and also because OPEC cuts will be kept, and then it will also check supply. Then we come to Nigeria, where we see Naira weakening, even though not so much. It's been a kind of stable. I think it's about 3 weeks. We've seen the Naira hovering about 1,004, 1,000, less than 1,005. You know, I guess it's not where we wanted. Remember, we're preaching the message of 700 for $1, but that's a dream in the future. So we'll stick with what we have for now. We see that it's just a little bit change, 0.01%, very marginal, 0.10% for NAFEX. But it's about 485 naira 53 kobo for NAFEM, almost the same for NAFEX. That's the close for Friday, and of course the opening numbers for today. And something that could help the Naira, perhaps. You know, a lot of central banks are turning to gold now for their reserves. Perhaps Nigeria is also joining that, because over the weekend, Nigeria transacted its first commercial transaction under the National Gold Purchase Program. The Minister of Solid Minerals and Development, Mr. Dele Alake, presented gold bars to President Bola Tinubu and said that the gold bars were sourced from artisanal and small gold miners in Nigeria. Interesting. So even though it's a purchase program that we have, but we see that we also are producing ours. That's warm to the heart. According to Mr. Alake, the program has delivered $5 million into Nigeria's foreign reserves and injected about $6 billion into the rural economy. He also revealed that over 70 kilograms of gold have been sold to London bullion market. Good delivery standard marked successful aggregation of locally mined gold. That's something we would really like to follow up on in the coming days here on the program, because we do know it's not just Nigeria. We do know that China, for instance, moved the price of gold when it surged because they bought a whole lot of gold. Even some African countries are turning to gold for their reserve instead of the dollar, and that could boost the value of a currency. We'll see how Nigeria goes, and we'll try and get the appropriate personality to have that conversation on our business programs right here on Channels Television. Another interesting thing is Google. I wonder why Google is so interested in Nigeria. Do you wonder with me? Well, we'll find out this morning with Mr. Olumide Balogun. Mr. Olumide Balogun is the country director for West Africa, Google. You want to search anything, you go to Google. Hi, Olumide, good morning.
Thank you, good morning. Thanks for having me.
You must be very proud to be working in Google, because when people want to search for things, now people hardly even use the word search. They say, I want to Google it. I'm sure you feel proud.
I think what I feel is excited. I think privileged to work for a company that we really think about how technology affected the lives of people all over the world. And I think for us in Africa, it's really about how we use technology for the benefit of driving economic opportunity for our users, our businesses, and our partners. And I'd say more than proud, I feel excited to work in this space.
Yeah, and it's good to have you as a Nigerian representing West Africa. You know, we Nigerians are proud. We are the most populated. We should have that say. But we see Google very active in Nigeria. Oh, Google is doing this project, is doing that. They're investing this amount and all of that. Why so much interest?
I think it starts really from, we're a few months off our 26 years we've been in, Google has been as a company, and it's never been more relevant. Our founding mission has been to organize the world's information, and we want to make the information universally accessible and useful. And that just means, how do we help that information be available everywhere to everyone? And that includes African users. And I'm sure you'll agree with me with the teeming amount of youth population that we have here on the continent, who are very creative, and also because because we see that technology could play a very interesting role in terms of driving economic opportunity, as well as just driving our GDP growth in its totality. So we are really looking about how we drive digital transformation here on the continent and in Nigeria more specifically. And that's really what we've been investing in over the last few years.
And that's why you started the AI training for journalists. Even though I didn't get to be there, I see that you focused on the female journalists, you know, but sometimes when we talk about AI seriously in Nigeria, personally, I ask myself, is this our priority at this time? Just like we talk about climate change. Yeah, we see the negative impact, but we know that Nigeria is not a major contributor to that, you know, and so we ask ourselves, are we done with the basics? We're talking of AI. Are we done with 3G? Are we done with 4G? As a journalist, how equipped, you know, our individuals, and now you want to train journalists on AI? Won't it just be one training among the many?
It's an excellent question, and it's a question that I get all the time. And thanks for the opportunity to answer this here on channels, because I think that when you look at technology and the impact that technology could have, it could not only help us solve problems that we have, you know, today, but it could also help us leapfrog potential problems that we may see in the future. And we are excited about the transformative power of AI. We say that it's most possibly the most interesting thing that humanity is working on at this point in time. And that is why we've, you know, are really looking at how we invest into training, driving skill set acquisition for Africans here on the continent and in Nigeria to acquire the skills that's required and that's necessary. And that's from everywhere from, you know, I think people who are just everyday people and everyday users to journalists to business people to really get the skills that's required, because human capital will be key. You know, I think in this knowledge economy. And we do not want to just be consumers of the technology. We think that we can be producers of the technology as well. And that is how we see it.
So interesting. And we know that we have a lot of brilliant minds in Nigeria, but in ease of doing business, the environment, policy, infrastructure, all of those just pop up, you know, to kind of discourage the minds, you know. But tell us what you're doing to actually actualize some of these ideas. You know, I'm sure you sit down with your friends and you see you hear a lot of very good innovations. They say Africa to save the world, or Africa to solve Africans' problem before we solve, you know, but we don't really see it coming to pass because of, you know, some of those hindrances. If
you look at some research that we've done in combination with Alpha Beta, an economic strategy firm, we see that technology could play a very critical role in driving economic growth. And one of the things we see is there are 4 areas that are critical. So number 1 is human capital. Number 2 is physical capital. Number 3 is just how competitive the environment is. And number 4 is technology. And you'd see that across 2 of these areas, we want to be able to, you know, drive transformation and also contribute to the development of the human capital on the ground. We see that when this happens, people can take and solve problems within their local communities. And that's what you see, you know, about the work that we've done. We launched recently, you know, I think in partnership with the Edo State government, AI video series in Hausa, which is really to take AI concepts, complex concepts, break it down, locally relevant context, and really train women and girls to help get the skills so that they can solve everyday problems within their local community. Give us an example of the skills, you know, that you... So everything from introduction to AI, computer vision, natural language processing, even introduction to self-driving cars. Those are things that we are currently, and we've trained already 3,400 girls on. And this is part of a larger, by the way, human capital development initiative that we're doing. We launched last year a 1.2 billion naira grant to Mind the Gap, a youth-focused organization, to help train really youth and women, you know, across all of the states in Nigeria with digital skills that they require to solve problems in their communities today. And we're already seeing very incredible stories. You know, for example, I can talk of Adiza, a mother of 5, who's already learned the, you know, data analysis skills and is solving and is working for UK-based Omiba Consulting right from here in Nigeria. She's already working a remote job. And we see that this also supports the government's agenda to drive 1 million digital jobs by 2030.
Very, very interesting. And I'm glad you gave that example, because, I mean, I think people relate more when you have examples, things, you know, they can see and touch. And we have a lot of businesses, small businesses. As we know, small businesses are the driving force of any economy everywhere, you know. Tell us how you're working with small businesses to turn ideas to businesses that actually work?
We think small businesses are the lifeblood of any economy. We were a small business ourselves, as I said, just 25 years ago. And when you think about the contribution to GDP, I think it's something like 47% contribution to GDP. 85% of the workforce is actually employed by small businesses, and there are 96% of the businesses in Nigeria today are small businesses. So we think small businesses are really critical, and they will require technical and technological skills to help drive growth and to help advance, their cause. And some of the work we've done over the last few years is something we call the Google Hustle Academy, for example, where, I think to date we've trained 4,000 small businesses, providing them with digital-ready skills to help really think about how they solution and how they evolve their business model and how they evolve their execution to help reach a larger number of customers. I think the other thing is just how we help also with funding. I talked about human capital as being key. I talked about physical capital is incredibly important, and that's something that you agree with me. It's not just easy to come by. We have done a lot of work in the last few years to give grants to small businesses to help them really get the leg up, and accelerate their business growth.
What areas? Is it just ICT?
No. As a matter of fact, we do across the board. We feel like IT is the lifeblood of business. IT essentially transforms every type of business that you look at. So everything from agric to fashion to food. We've really done trainings, as I said, with 4,000 SMBs. As a matter of fact, we have a cohort open right now, for the new cohort of small businesses that we want to train. So it really covers a multiplicity of disciplines.
But tell me, the reality of Nigeria is multinationals. A lot of multinationals are leaving the country at this time because the environment is not very friendly to doing business. Better to even import than if you want to manufacture here, because you import every component and all of. How's that affecting your plans as Google in the country?
I think the way that we see it is it's a global challenge. I think globally we do see that there's a shift kind of like in the economics. There's a shift in purchasing power. And we're really here for the long term. As we are in many emerging countries in the world that are a little bit ahead of where we are as an African continent or as Nigeria as a country. And what we do is we're able to take learnings from how we've managed, I think, tepid and difficult periods and apply them back home here. And for us, it's really about how do we invest and how do we make the ecosystem competitive. Who would have thought many years ago that you'd have 6 unicorns? I think is what we have right now, here in Nigeria. And we really believe and we have the confidence that we will see many more as long as we're able to stick to it and continue to invest and support businesses to grow with the power of technology.
And Google is going nowhere.
No, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
I think Microsoft actually said something like that, but now I think they're building something in Ghana, leaving Nigeria, and things like that, and people complain of policy inconsistency, and all of that. Of course, the drop in the value of the Naira, which is affecting everybody, even domestic companies, So how do you cope with all of this to sustain your plans and keep on keeping on in the country?
I think it's a great question. A lot of businesses are having to manage, and it's very difficult to thrive during this time. But the way we really see it is we take a long, approach. We really take a long approach and look at what are the things essentially that we should be doing now. What are the things that we can maybe delay till another time when potentially the economy is a little bit more stable. And for us, I think that at the end of the day, we have to invest and we have to accelerate out of where we are now. And that's really about how we develop the ecosystem. And we think AI and technology at large could play a really important role in that.
Okay, so I'll hold you to your word. If I hear Google is leaving Nigeria, I'll call your number.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's take a break. When we come back, we'll head to the market right here on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. welcome back. Still Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We head to the markets now to see how, beginning with the equities fared last week. We saw that at the close of the week's trade, the market was in the red, 0.18% at 99,743.05. Equity cap 56 trillion naira, which is where it's been. A very interesting week we saw last week. Activity chart was more of the green, but we had less deals compared to the previous week. Sectors, banking, the most interesting one. A lot of things happened last week there. Banking closed in the red. In spite of that, Fidelity Bank's public offer, double offer that came on, and a lot of excitement among investors. We did see that it's closed down. Consumer goods, Nigerian breweries and all of that contributed to that. Industrial goods. Insurance lost more than 5%, while oil and gas, well, unexpectedly closed in the green. Top gainers last week were Champion Breweries PLC, Veritas Capital, Assurance, and Charms. Remember, we had the group managing director of Charms here some time ago. Well, they did well. Top gainer last week. Talking about ICT, we just discussed with Olumide right there. Well, that's part of them. And then top losers, insurance. That's why we had that 5% drop or so with insurance, NEM Insurance, Regency Insurance, and Transco Hotels has been surging, so I guess it's time to take profit. Top trade, Fidelity. Fidelity was so much in the news last week. FBN Holdings also, you know, the move of Mr. Tedola also put that in the news. Veritas Capital, that's insurance. They also were part of the top trade. But let's talk to Mr. Abdul-Rashid Momo now to get a clearer picture and perhaps expectations for this week. Mr. Momo, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I loud and clear?
I can hear you, Mr. Momo. So last week, I would have thought that the banking counter will close in the green, but it was in the red in spite of so much activities and interest. What happened?
I always like to speak using my technicals. You see, I did say the market was hovering within the support and resistance levels about 99,000 points, about 100,000 points. So what happened last week, the market seems to is trying to break that resistance. It did it twice. On, I think, Thursday, the market got to an intraday high of about 100,000 on Thursday and Friday, but it still closed below 100,000 units. So basically, the bulls are trying to test that level. If the bulls are able to break that level, then we are in a new bull trend. But as it is, market is more on the sideways movement between 99,000 points to about 100, close to about 100,000 points. So basically, what we are seeing are more of volumes. We are seeing volumes, but we are not seeing huge price appreciation. As you said earlier on that if you see the counters for last week, you see that they are not really major stocks. So they cannot really put much effect in terms of bull effect on more effect on the overall index.
So Fidelity Bank is they're out there, open, the offer is out there. How do we expect that to affect the counter? I mean, a lot of analysts have said it's to make a good buy. When you look at the price, the value now, and what is an offer?
Well, the most important thing is the two prices were, I think, about 975 and 9. I think below 975 is the max, I think, for the public offer. But at close of Friday, the market closed at 990. As we speak now, it's trading at, it's trading at Fidelity. It's now trading at 10 naira. So the most important thing is, as long as if you can get Fidelity below the market price at which they are offering their public offer, it's a good deal. From what we are seeing, the price must be above. The current price must always be above the offer price. So if it goes below that, then I mean I won't use the word. It's a waste. It's a wasted effort. So as it is, the current price is above the market price, which is good for their public offer.
Have you heard of any news? Who's coming next? I'm talking of the banks now because it's obviously towards the recapitalization.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's supposed to have been Access. There was a flash on Access 2 weeks ago where they gave us a price. I think Access was supposed to come in at, I think 1975 or so, 1945. We saw a flash last week on Access, and that's why we saw the movement. We saw the stock moving from about it moved from about 17 naira plus, to about, yes, it moved from 17 naira plus. That result came out I think 2 weeks ago. We saw a flash on it, and I don't think that thing. I don't think there's an approval on it, because if they allow the banks to all come in at the same time, it's going to be a huge burden on the market. So I think there'll likely going to be a timetable from SEC which will allow the banks to come in at a particular period, perhaps between a 2 months or 3 months time frame, so that they don't put so much pressure in the markets.
Okay, and now oil and gas seems to be getting attention too. Does this have anything to do with Dangote Petrol, which is expected in a couple of weeks? I think next week. They said from July.
Yeah, we've been expecting that for some time, but number one, when we ask Dangote is not the only stock that is active in the oil sector. If you look at it, it's corn oil. I mean, Owando is the most liquid. Then Total moved because there was, I think they're paying about 25 kobo. So that was when we saw a flash movement on Total. You see, what I want to know about the oil sector is that we don't see volatility. The only stock that is liquid in this oil sector is Owando. So if any information comes in, Owando, you know that Owando has some things coming up. That's why we are seeing a lot of activities trading on Owando. And I think this is just the beginning of a good rally for Owando after a very long time. I mean, we've not seen such rally since God knows how long. But Owando seems to be trending well now. 16 naira supposed to be like a restart level. If it breaks, we know that for the long term, Owando, there's things going to open for Owando. But in terms of what we are seeing, I don't think there's any effect based on what we are seeing in the Dangote for now. Because if we seen it would have impacted on oil, every other oil sector like corn
oil and MRS and all of that. So what do you see this week, Mr. Momo? We know that this week also in the fixed income space, the Eurobond is there that the federal government has now released. So that's competition for the NGX. How do you see that playing out by the end of this week for, the NGX?
The truth is that the market is still going to be flat till the end of this year, till the end of this week. One thing that, as I've said, the market needs to break the 100,000 level. If the market doesn't break the 100,000 level, then we are not going anywhere. The market is trending sideways, good in for, apart from investors that are getting value, you can see that there's more stability in most of the stocks now, where we are not seeing all those crazy ups and downs as we need to see. So the market is calm. So there must be something that will definitely going to trigger the market, and that's what we are waiting for. But as it is now, I don't see anything. As long as the market is just going to be range bound between 99,500 and about 100,000 points. So nothing is going to happen. But for now, I know that the banking sector are still the best. We can see a lot of consolidation in the banks. We're seeing, I think First Bank did about 1 billion last week. GT did 75, Transcorp did 64, Zenith 43, Assets 41, and UBA 39. So for now, those are the areas, the banks are the areas people are going to, but the market remains flat. So I don't see any change.
It would be nice at least to hit the 100,000 level by the close of the week. But thank you so much, Mr. Abdulrasheed Momo, for sharing your time and perspective with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's it. Markets to be closed. I guess investors will just, look the way or where you have the potential to make more profits. It's only natural. And for this week, it seems to be the fixed income market. The Eurobond is out. The auction begins today. So a lot of investors will be looking that way. But thank you so much. There'll be fresh market numbers for you at 1 p.m. during Business Incorporated. Ladi will be here as well as Will Ibong. They're going to take you around the world of business. You don't want to miss it. I'm Inijad Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, concerns over the outbreak of cholera in Nigeria is what we're talking about next. And so far, something in the region of 21 deaths have been recorded. With us this morning is the General Manager, Edo State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA, Dr. Babatunde Ajayi. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Well, perhaps let's begin with the basics. What are the basic things that people need to understand about this outbreak?
Oh, well, I'd say that, first of all, most of these outbreaks are environmental. They have environmental causes. They're environmental issues, right? And it is purely around sanitation, basic sanitation, access and usage of clean water, and how they can keep their hygiene intact, really. So it's a lot of, personally looking out for water, clean water, good hygiene, and good sanitation around you.
Why is that some kind of elusive idea?
It's not elusive. I think that, all through the fabric of education and even society, everybody has a rough idea of what is right and what should be done. However, sometimes people drop the ball, and then, people just get very careless along the line. There are also issues around taking personal responsibility for your own health and, sanitation, which is where one person's carelessness now leads to multiple infections, and sometimes it could spiral out of one's grip.
The understanding and what we have on the screen for a number of people now is to even recognize the symptoms and the things to prevent and all of that. Are these things coming to people strangely or for the first time? I saw some of the videos that your team went out to make in certain areas. Like in one of those areas is Koshope. Please tell us about it and what are the findings?
So what had happened? Also, at the beginning of the outbreak, what we had thought was to identify the clusters that were most affected. So we had Mushin, we had Lagos Island, we had Koshofe. And we thought to, at the very least, assess the issues, the environmental issues, take samples, run the samples and see what it would look like. We have an ISO-certified laboratory, which we then use to analyze the samples. So we went around and we found that some of the water facilities that these people had, in their homes, in their places, did not quite comply with expected standards. For instance, we had places where the borehole was sunk about 2 feet away from the sewage treatment plant or sewage, what we call soakaway pit, right? And of course, clearly there will be seepage of that sewage into the borehole, the water from the borehole. Interestingly, that water point serves that community. That's where they sell water to that community from. So we are taking a sample from there to analyze and see. A couple of things have come out of that. So we then thought to double up on this activity, and then make sure, in partnership with the Environmental Health Department, make sure that, you know, these things are checked early enough and people know what to do in terms of water and sanitation.
Available information says that the outbreak, as of June 19, 417 suspected cholera cases have been recorded, 35 confirmed cases, and 24 deaths have been recorded in Lagos alone. That's the image right there, you know, for many people to see. And last week it wasn't up to 24. The last we heard was it was 21, and now we have, you know, this. From understanding, available information also tells us, even from this morning, when Dr. Roberts was on our previous program, one of the things that she made clear to us, look, the high point, it's an annual cycle. Cholera is an annual cycle. It's not something that just springs on us. It is something that happens every year, and that the peak is between July and August. It will seem like, being in June right now, we're just growing. Is there, are we to expect worse? How do we ensure that these things don't happen again?
I think the synchrony or the cycle there has something to do with the rain season, the rainfall season. So once the rain starts, all of the small areas of hygiene gaps, right, are then exposed. So people who didn't use proper toilets and who did their thing in public drains now have, you know, rainwater washing it to, you know, other people. And then that is a problem. So that then can infect people. So it's around the cycle of, you know, the rainy season. And I think that with the work rates we have now, I'm sure that we are able to contain it, and we won't have that stretch up until August this time. Because the Ministry of Environment is clearly on it. We're doing water to these communities. We're doing hard advocacy on how to sanitize their water or how to purify their water before use. We're taking the gospel right into their homes. So I think that we won't get as much impact in terms of caseload now.
Well, to anyone who values life, the caseload is significant enough at this point. And perhaps part of the issues here is the preventive as opposed to the curative medicine that we tend to be practicing now. Back in the day, and we've referenced it quite a number of times here, that rather than focus on the curative, we can focus on the preventive medicine, as we had done in previous years when sanitation officers went from the local government areas into the homes of people to say, guys, you know, this is happening. In fact, I remember clearly, it were the days of water ports. If your water port had anything that moved inside of it, that water port was broken. You were mandated to go get another one. I think people now began from there to even move away from the water ports. When they began to use plastics, if the sanitation officers went into your house and they saw that the water had any kind of color, they broke that thing and you just had to find a way to fix it. We don't seem to have that anymore.
So I think that a few things have moved around in terms of, you know, what you expect and call change. Number one, there's a huge population explosion already, right? And then we still have sanitation officers. They're still going around. We still do a lot of, you know, door-to-door, house-to-house campaigns. I mean, particularly within this cholera period, and even with styrofoam.
Are you talking about officers of LASEPA or local government officials?
No, I'm taking it now to local government officials, the environmental health officers, and they're under the Ministry of Environment, and they also do all of this advocacy. So advocacy is sort of a shared responsibility. The Lagos Wastewater Management Office is also doing advocacy on hygiene and sanitation, right? LASEPA is in advocacy. Environmental health officers are going from door to door. It is currently happening. It may not be as intense as it used to be. I mean, because of the volume of people that now, you know, have to be reached. I mean, you don't have huge clusters of people, and going house to house will be some sort of, you know, a hard task. But I know that, you know, we have moved into community since 10th of June, and we have done a lot of advocacy, hard advocacy in that respect, particularly on cholera. Also, these things around what used to happen, also days when we had strong enforcement and we had strong strong grip of the behavior of the environmental behavioral patterns of people. Now we're trying to get that grip back, right? With the leadership of Honorable Tokunbo Wahab, who is the Commissioner for Environment, we're able to now, speak with one hard voice to say, you know what, you cannot be this lax anymore in Lagos. You cannot be this careless with your hygiene anymore in Lagos. You cannot be this careless with your sanitation anymore in Lagos, right? And that's the advocacy we are pushing out. We're making sure that it is getting to the nooks and crannies.
But
and the very good days are coming back.
Okay, let's hope that, because one of the videos that I saw that your people, went to put out was that a particular, water reservoir is naturally black in color, had turned brown. And people were taking water from that to drink and to sell. And I also saw in one of those efforts that your people went to make that they took whatever it was white and scraped through a pipe. And guess what? It came out brown. And people were taking water from there to sell, to cook food, to drink, and all of that. So I'm wondering how far back this goes and how long will it take to catch up, because this is just one example. There are 20 local governments and 57 LCDAs in all in Lagos State. So one is wondering, how long is it going to take?
So I think that the essence of showcasing some of the work we do is so that the message can travel faster and people can see that the gallon or the reservoir you're using has to be taken care of and cleaned from time to time. The message behind that clip was to make sure that you ask the guy selling water to you to clean his gallon from time to time. I mean, the fact that people now know that those gallons are very dirty, there will be that need, they would have that nudge to ask them, when last did you wash this gallon? Apart from going from house to house, we're also passing that message, across the waves. So I can tell that now people have begun to check. People have started asking what their water pipes look like. If you open those gallons, a lot of them have algae. Some of us don't even wash our water tanks at home. If you open the water tanks of some houses, it's as dark and as green as you can imagine. So what we're saying is your water tank has to be washed at the very least twice a year. You need to clean out your water system because it can harbor infections. It can be the access that you would have to all of these infections. There are many people who even live around wetlands, and all of those bush areas.
Those are huge conversations to have. Well, while we're talking about local government here, there's another angle to it somewhere else. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed. Our correspondent Charles Oporom is in River State, Port Harcourt. So there's some protest there. He's in the thick of things. So his station is just moving all over the place, and it's an active scenario. So let's get to him and see if we could just get him on the line to talk to us about what you see right now. Good morning, Charles. Yeah, we already see images of protesters marching from one end to the other. Could you situate that for us now? What's going on?
Good morning, Chamberlain. Yes, I am live here in Buguma, council headquarters of Asari Toru local government area of River State. As early as 8 a.m., the crowd started collecting somewhere in Buguma opposite one of their grammar schools, led by the former chairman, the one whose tenure just expired last week, on Ngiofori George. Initially, we thought, I thought it was going to be like a press briefing or something of that nature. But then when we got here, we saw crowds collecting from the different wards of the local government, and they started waving placards, chanting, singing, and some of the inscription on the placards include the ones I could read. They were asking the Inspector General of Police to continue to order his men to occupy the council headquarters. Some of the inscriptions read like, Seminalai Fubara, you cannot continue to behave anyhow and go scot-free. And there is no vacancy in Asari Toru local government, among others. So it looks like it's a protest put together, mobilized by the immediate past council chairman, because it's happening across 21 out of the 23 local government areas in the state. We've walked from one end of the town to the other. We understand the former chairman told me that they would be presenting a letter to the IG through the DPO. And then, of course, when they present that letter, they want to ask the police to continue to occupy the council.
Okay, but Charles, are any one of them in sight? Have you seen any one of them? The former council chairman.
Say again.
Have you seen any one of the former council chairman?
Oh, yes. I was just with Onengiofori George. You know, he's the one leading the protest, so I couldn't really pull him aside to have this conversation. But he's the one leading the protest. He was here, and indeed, he's at the forefront. His people, his supporters are chanting and singing alongside him. And it's not just here. My other colleague is somewhere else in Akukutoru, and it's the same thing. You know, I understand that the former chairman had a meeting last night where they agreed to take on this protest. And this is coming despite an advisory from the Rivers State Police Command against holding protests today. Chamberlain.
Oh, Charles, can you also bring us up to speed? Because we understand there was a statement by the commander of, beg your pardon, the CP in Rivers State now, released by the PRO in Rivers, saying that, you know, people should not protest today, that the protest had every risk of being infiltrated. It doesn't appear that that warning was heeded, was it?
Yes, Mark, but you are correct. The statement was released and signed yesterday by SP Grace Iringe Koko, the spokesperson of the Rivers State Police Command. And a part of that statement read, while we recognize the rights of Nigerians to peaceful protest, we advise against protesting at this time. Now, the idea, of course, was that the police, by their intelligence, thought or believed that the protest, if they went on, was going to be infiltrated by faith columnists, and it would lead to a breakdown of law and order. Remember, yesterday the former chairman held a press briefing where they raised an alarm about a protest, another protest, which was supposed to have held today by NOLGI, the members of NOLGI, that's the local government employees, their union, the organized labor, NLC, CUC, and some civil society organizations. You know, when they raised alarm about that, barely 2 hours later, organized labor came out, did their own press briefing, where they asked their members not to protest today. But interestingly, there was a third press briefing yesterday by the caretaker committee chairman as appointed by the governor, and there was a counter accusation yesterday by the CTC chairman, accusing the former chairman of masterminding a protest for today. Apparently, it looks like that was the case because it's happening right now. Mark Bay.
Well, thank you very much, Charles. Thank you for your report, and please stay safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ayo, back now to you.
Well, you know, thank you, Maokwe and Chamberlain. Well, from one local government issue to another, I mean, it's interestingly, from the records available, even from the NCDC, Rivers State is not one of those states in the country with any case of cholera as of 7 days ago. Whether there are updates or not, I guess we'll wait to see while that crisis is ongoing and hoping for peace across board. Back to you now, Dr. Ajayi. So the issues are there, and now we are talking about whether or not the local government administrators have the authority or the permission or the enablement to do the things that they are supposed to do. Why is that an issue?
I don't think it's an issue. I think that they do have the enablement. I think they're able to also contain whatever they find. So the response to this outbreak is collaborative. We have activity from local government. We have activity from the state government. As a matter of fact, the reporting we have is coordinated by the local government reporting officers.
But the challenge, the issue I'm raising is because of something that you said earlier, that over the years it would seem like we neglected to do a number of these things. Otherwise, I don't think a black tank, water tank, would turn brown, and the pipes themselves will turn brown. I don't think that if the surveillance was as significant as you're saying, that anyone will be going around with, cart pushers will be going around with clearly dirty, filthy looking. It's part of the efforts that your team went to see with the videos that we saw. Very, very dirty looking, water kegs, and people get to sell such water to other people. Your people opened the tank and scraped the inside and brought out brown, and they went and tested the water. I saw the video. So if this was as statewide as you're saying, and the local government officers were able to do the things that they were supposed to do, I don't know if your people will still have to do all of that.
So I think clearly there's a gap, and there's a bit of strengthening that has to be done, in terms of making sure that, one, people take their own hygiene and sanitation as seriously as possible. The role of personal responsibility in cholera outbreaks and epidemics like this cannot be understated. I also think that on the local government side, the health and the environmental leg need to, sort of work more together, and then make sure that there's proper enforcement, whenever they find these kinds of things. It's also not one of those things that you will ordinarily check on, unless there are issues like this. But going forward, I know that we have now put structures in place to make sure that at every point in time, people are checking. Both local government officials, state government officials, from time to time, will move in and check what people are doing. We would also continue advocacy. I think that the best way to create change is to continuously talk about it and then insist that people do the right thing, which is what we're doing.
Now, Lagos is the smallest state in Nigeria geographically, but it is not a distance to be walked easily by any human being.
Sure.
We're right here now talking around here. Badagry is quite a length of space from here. Ekpe is quite a length of space from here. Even Ikorodu, the closest of the long distances, is quite a length of space from here. So I'm wondering how you think the information will be getting to the people. Definitely, the people have their own responsibilities. We'll come to that in a minute. But it's because people are not being as responsible as they should be that we even have a system that tells them and ensures that they do the needful. So what's the plan to get all of this information across the far and wide distances of the city?
So the advocacy plan is very detailed. It is a very robust plan. I'll start with the media information side of things, right? So all of the agencies under the Ministry of Environment are all out now doing advocacy. That's why I'm here. Laswamo has done a few clips, that is circulating on radio. A few of us are speaking on radio. A few people are on television. People are on the grassroots level now, speaking from house to house. The environmental health officers are moving from house to house, engaging people and letting them know. Now, for us, the sustainability and the continuity of this kind of activity is where the hard work is, So you have to continuously talk about it and continuously drive it into their minds, even when the epidemic is over. And that is how you sustain, good health. That is how you sustain a good environment. So beyond that, we're moving to schools at some point. There's a partnership now between health, environment, and school. The One Health space. Agric is also involved. I mean, in all of the places where we can establish vulnerability, we're beginning to move in to talk to them. And it is not just one person talking, it is everybody coming to the table. Everybody saying something. Yesterday, even after we had done a lot of rounds around Lagos on drainage services and things in the morning, the commissioner still mentioned it, that, cholera has something to do with how clear these drainages are, how water is able to flow, during the rain. So everybody's talking about it. So because we're talking about it and we're also moving the message down to the grassroots, the local government is also talking about it. The MOHs in each of the primary healthcare districts are also talking about it. We're making sure that we inform people as much as possible. So we hope that all of these efforts will culminate into people taking responsibility for these spaces. We would also be needing a lot of enforcement around the cleanliness and hygiene of people and, their practices in terms of access to clean water. For the areas affected, for instance, we have rolled out water tanks to those areas while we cordon them off. The infected water spots, cordon them off. We did a lot of sanitization and chlorination, and we have supplied water to those local governments through the Lagos State Water Corporation. So all of us are working together to make sure that we surmount this epidemic and also sustain the message over time.
Now, this disease is largely communicated through water. Now, we had, at some point in our lives in the city, Lagos State Water Corporation that supplied water to almost every, if not every part of the city. But it will seem like it's a different story now. One of the videos, put out right there is of people building water holes right beside, sewage tanks, right beside burial spaces in their homes. And we know that some of these things have been outlawed. So do these enforcements come with any kind of penalty to the people?
Yes. So environmental infractions generally come with penalties, and these penalties can range from small fines to community service, and to very small, detention issues. And I think that we have environmental courts that are actively on these things. So whenever we find these things that are clearly not legal and not hygienic, we make sure that the people who are committing infractions are, held to responsibility. And
my apologies, are these penalties, or are they stiff enough to be significant deterrents?
Yes, they are. I mean, if you drop your refuse indiscriminately and you are caught, for instance, you will probably do, at the very minimum, 6 hours of community service. If you are detained for 6 hours and you are made to cut grass in a very large compound, you don't want to go back to that experience. I mean, it's an environmental infraction. You don't want to go back to that experience. And you'll be made to do this thing, with the cameras. So you'll be made an example to other people, So you would be an example of what a responsible person should not be. Of course, if people are watching, then you will not do it again. So I think that they are stiff enough for environmental offenses. And, we continue to make sure that people are held responsible whenever it is they commit these infractions.
Now, let's quickly talk about the responsibility of the people. Okay. How do we get that into our lifestyles? Because it's not just about offenses, it's about lifestyle of the people. What's missing?
So the lifestyle is very closely related to what people know, what they are aware of, and what they don't take for granted. And I think that someone is said to be responsible when they do something consistently when no one is watching. The reason you're drinking clean water should not be because someone is watching you whether you drink it or not. The reason you are dumping your refuse appropriately or disposing your refuse appropriately it should not be because Loma is watching. It should not be because someone is trying to make you do the right thing. It should be a personal responsibility. So I think we will get to that point where people have to take personal responsibility. And I think that the precedents, in the past few months, would have shown clearly that if you don't take personal responsibility, by the time the long arm of the law comes, it will take its course, and you will be made to pay for it.
Well, we have to thank you very much for coming here this morning. I'm hoping that we'll have further conversations about this, because this is just one, and there are a number of others from information available from the NCDC. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Babatunde Ajayi is the General Manager, Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA. Thank you again for your time. Okay, Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed, guys. We also have to thank you all. So we're keeping tabs on what's going on in Katsina, in Rivers, and Kano, as a matter of fact. But we'll bring you all of those. Just keep it locked here at Channels. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Osor. Goodbye.
Well, while you keep it warm today, also keep it sterile. Make sure that you're not spreading infection anywhere you go. Thank you for watching. I'm Maupe Ogun-Yusuf.
And please do pass the information on. Several other people who may not have watched this program need the information you have gotten. Amaya Makinde, do have a wonderful and productive week.
The following is a paid presentation by ShopX TV.
Tired of pans that scratch and stick? Or cookware that takes up valuable space in your kitchen? Introducing ShopX Gotham Hammered Copper Collection, the perfect cookware to upgrade your cooking experience. The Gotham Hammered Copper Collection features a super durable ultra non-stick surface. Eggs stick to other pans, but with the Hammered Copper Collection, they slide right out.